Hey everybody. For those following the journey, thanks for checking in. For the strangers just clicking, I'm Johnny, a singer, songwriter, guitar player, live performance kind of guy. Been doing it professionally for about 30 years. That's how I make my living. Never been really sick. Never been to the hospital unless you want to count the time I had a motorcycle crash when I was 12 and broke my arm. But other than that, the only time I've ever been in the hospital is to visit sick people. I've been smoking cigarettes for about 40 years. Don't drink too much around the house, but when I'm out on the town or at the show, I've been known to hit it pretty hard. Whiskey being the poison of choice. I've never been one for warming up my voice before the show, or vocal exercises, or staying hydrated, or anything semi-intelligent like that. It just wasn't part of the thought process. It's more like it's time to honky-tonk, let's get it on. A couple of years ago, we were out on the road playing some shows, 3 or 4 consecutive shows, something like that. And by the last show, my voice was completely blown, and spent probably at least half of the last set pulling out every instrumental that I knew. This was the first time that something like this had happened, so I really wasn't too overly concerned about it. I thought, I just have a sore throat or something. But was this a catalyst for things to come? I'm not really sure, but it seems like this is where it all started. It didn't take really too long to recover. I was back at it in a couple of weeks. And looking back on it, I could tell my voice hadn't recovered 100%. But, it was close enough. I wasn't really worried about it. I'd be firing again on all 8 cylinders in no time. About a year rolled by, and I noticed that my throat would get really dry during the show. I kind of chalked this up to being a little older, maybe needing to hydrate myself a bit. Hot lights making you sweat, having some alcohol on stage to dry you out wasn't really helping, but I really didn't think about that. I started noticing that my throat would be getting dry before the show. And this set off a little red flag, but nothing really too alarming. It wasn't like some kind of crazy stuff going on. I'm probably the exact opposite of a hypochondriac. Every once in a blue show, I could feel a little bump in the back of my throat, when it was really dry and raw. And at the time, I would not consider this being some kind of a lump or a cyst or a polyp or anything like that. Things like that just don't happen to me. Then I got a swollen lymph node. It's not an uncommon thing. I mean, most people get a swollen lymph node at some point in their life, be it being sick or having a tooth infection problem, which is exactly what I was going through at the time. So, my swollen lymph node was due to a tooth infection. After having the tooth problem fixed and the lymph node still being swollen a couple of months later, my dentist advised me to seek out a head, throat, and neck specialist, not exactly in that order, but you know what I mean. So I went, and the physical examination turned out nothing. So, in my brain, the problem was still very minor. That opinion started to change when the blood work came back. The blood test showed that I had HPV virus, and a biopsy of my lymph node needed to be taken. Things are getting a little more serious now. The biopsy came back as positive for squamous cell carcinoma. Now it's time to go into a stunned panic mode, if there is such a thing as that. certainly a first time I ever felt anything like that. I mean, is this going to be the end of my singing career? Then came the barrage of testing. Ultrasounds, CAT scans, MRIs, more biopsies, poked and prodded and lowered and louvered. And to make a short story longer, they found a tumor, a small tumor on my right tonsil. I had no idea that it was there. After a few different consultations with a few different oncologists, we settled on a treatment plan, and the risk of permanently damaging my vocal cords are pretty low. So that was a huge relief. Therefore the panic has somewhat subsided. Now I just have to worry about dying. Sorry, that wasn't funny. So if I was to give any advice at all to the singers out there, and especially the older hardcore honky-tonk folk, we are the last of a dying breed. I would say if you have any of these symptoms, and especially if these symptoms are persistent, then have somebody take a look at it. Because the thought of never being able to perform again is freaking mind-blowing. And I wouldn't wish that on anybody, no matter how many times you play Sweet Home Alabama. Please don't play that song again.